The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
It is 2025. It's a brand new year. Mark Ingram back in the studio here on Tony Curry Radio. We took a few weeks off, and we are back to kick off the brand new year with the UAB Director's Chair. He is the athletic director for your UAB Blazers, Mark Ingram. Mark, Happy New Year to you, brother. How are you?
Same to you. I'm excellent. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. You and I kind of went off script a little bit. We started doing a show called The Inferno, which you can still listen to and find at UABsports.com, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And we decided to go ahead and pick this show back up because we had so much fun. And we talked about classic rock, some other things that we couldn't really get into in the other social. We certainly want to do that. Football season is over. Your thoughts on the national championship game? We'll start there.
I thought the game was great, and I really was impressed with Notre Dame's ability to fight back there in the end when I think most of us had counted them out. And they had a real opportunity to tie the game there late. And Ohio State, though, imposed their will and ultimately was the better team. And I think that the championship, I think Ohio State probably was the best team in the country. The team that surprised me the most through the playoff was Oregon, who I thought was really tough.
Yeah.
And just got blistered in that first, what became the second round game, their first game, because they had a first round bye. And I thought it was really interesting that all four of the teams that had first round byes, which were allegedly the best four, they all lost. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know what the take is from those coaches, what they would say about why that is, or were they seeded wrong, or did having all that time off actually hurt them?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people would say that, Arizona State and Boise State probably shouldn't have gotten byes. They're obviously not the two best teams in college football, but that's the way it landed out. And I thought it was interesting that the 5, 6, 7, 8, the four teams in the middle of the pack, not the first four, not the last four, but the middle four were the ones that actually made it to the Final Four, which I thought was interesting. So with that being said, and I hear you lilting a little bit here, what would you do to change it? First of all, I want to say this, and we do a gambling show, and I was talking to a friend of mine out in Las Vegas, and he said there's just not, it doesn't feel like a Super Bowl to us. Now, I know a Super Bowl is different. I know it's the most envious and wonderful sport in the National Football League. It blows the ratings out from college football, but college football is still right there. But normally 2 weeks up to Super Bowl, there's so much going on, and I just didn't feel that excitement. Maybe it's because we didn't have a team in the SEC in play. Maybe it's because of the weird playing with the games following on a Thursday, Friday, and then of course the championship game on a Monday, and it was Inauguration Day. Something just didn't gel. But it was the first year. I thought it went really well. But what would you change? What were some things about it? Would you reseed? What would you do?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, a reseeding. If there's going to be a first round bye, it should be what you believe at that time are teams 1, 2, 3, and 4. It shouldn't have anything to do with your conference.
Yes.
It should have everything to do with
Agreed.
who do you think the top four are, and what the CFP committee, for I think it's 7 or 8 straight weeks, they meet from Sunday in person, Sunday to Tuesday, to talk about all these teams, and not just the top 4, the top 12. They talk about the top 25 and beyond. And I don't know how deep they get, if top 30 maybe. I think early, it starts to narrow as you get towards the end of the season, because you do start to feel like, hey, there's only, 2 games left or 3 games left. But in that early part, it's like they got like 50, and they start kind of shrinking that down to like the top 25 or 30. And like they would say, Tony, you're in charge of these teams. You got to watch these teams, and they send you all the games with all the commercials edited out so that you can watch them, as fast as possible. And you got to watch those Saturday and Sunday, and then get on a plane and go to Dallas. They all sit in a room together and they go through it. So my point is, they rank everybody, and that's how, we get those rankings. They rank everybody every week. And so whoever number 1, 2, 3, and 4 should have the first round bye. I also think, and James Franklin said this, no offense to my Catholic faith, thank you, Jesus. But I think Notre Dame should have to play a championship, or nobody should have to play a championship. I don't think it's fair. I don't know why Notre Dame is permitted to be an independent and treated so differently than any other independent. Why, BYU joined the Big 12 because it they weren't treated that way.
Yeah.
UMass is joining the MAC or something in football. They're not treated that way. Army has joined our league because they weren't going to be treated that way.
I don't know. Maybe you look at and Notre Dame's never been a slouch as far as the strength of schedule. In the last couple of years, they
They're
played some cream
not,
puffs.
but they're playing one less game.
Yeah, and maybe if you had a game, I mean, they primarily play an ACC schedule. And I know a lot of people thought they were eventually going to go to the Big Ten. That's not going to happen. But if they would play an extra game, I think, I agree with you. I think they should play.
And they don't want that. They don't want that because they're getting favor.
Yeah, the thing is, a championship game doesn't automatically mean. Remember, we used to say if you don't win your championship, you should not even get a sniff. Well, that's not going to happen. So if you're sitting there in the country 6th or 7th, you have a championship game, you still have a good shot at getting in anyway. The other thing I think is interesting is Notre Dame got a $20 million nut, while everyone else had to split their money.
I think that's okay. That doesn't bother me. The money doesn't bother me, because there's risk and reward there. The money goes to the conference that gets divided about amongst all the schools. So what they don't get is if they're not in the top 12, then they get zero.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt is getting a cut from Mississippi State, whoever was, I don't know who was last in the SEC.
You get a double stake, right? You get a double stake if you're one of those teams that goes in, and every game you play and you win, you make more money. Correct?
Your conference would decide that. That's a conference decision. But the point is, just like bowl games, everybody in the league, if a team goes, then the entire league benefits from one team getting into the playoff. That's how the conference money gets distributed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for Notre Dame, if they're not in the top 12, then they get zero.
Yeah.
But Mississippi State, who went like 3-9, they're getting a cut from the playoff, even though they weren't in it, but because from the SEC wasn't. I think it was 3 were, right?
Yeah.
And so I get my point is simply, though, about Notre Dame and your question about what would I change is I just think that they should have to participate in the ACC championship since they're playing like 4 or 5 ACC games. I think they should have to play in the ACC championship game if they're going to be. And what that would do, Tony, is it would potentially change the seeding. If they're in that game, they're probably still going to the playoff.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. And again, I mean, you could have them in a championship game, I guess, and not play an ACC schedule. I don't know. That'd be kind of difficult. I did want to ask you, and we've had lots of discussions on this show, and you can go back and, by the way, the podcasts are still up. You can find them anywhere. The UAB Director's Chair. There's only one show called UAB Director's Chair. It's fantastic. Go back and listen to all of our previous episodes. You and I have spoken a lot about money because we were sitting here doing the show during the NIL and the transfer portals and all those things as they evolved and changed. And of course, that $20 million nut came up again for Ohio State. That's basically what we've been told they spent on their football team. And so the best money could buy, and you could certainly see that talent. I'm not saying they wouldn't have won without that money. But a lot of people are like, is Notre Dame back? And I said, Notre Dame has never gone away. They played a championship, 12 years ago against Alabama. We saw that game. They got down 20-0. But I will say this, Catholic got money. I'm not saying Pope Francis is over there stroking a check. They got plenty of land. They got plenty of land. They plenty of money. Plenty of money over there in Vatican City. They've got money if they want to buy some players. Yeah. But do you foresee? But like SMU doesn't. And maybe you can tell me. I don't know what kind of money SMU spent this year, but they got in. So do you see down the road, unless something is fixed? I don't know what that is, where you're just going to have the big money teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers in it every single year?
Yeah, there's so many things wrong with this, player compensation discussion. The fact that we talk about it, we say revenue share instead of profit share. And that's fundamentally an issue when out of the 134 schools, there might be 20 that make a profit without help from their university. And so I'm not sure it's 20. And so that's fundamentally flawed. We're going to share revenue, not profits. We don't have profits. Tony, we don't have profit in anything that we do at UAB Athletics. And we try like heck to do that. But you can just start looking at it. What do we make in ticket sales, and what do we pay the staff and the scholarships, which people always kind of forget about, is a big ticket item, is paying for the scholarships, the travel. If you decided you were going to fly to Houston this weekend, and take your family, what would those flights cost? Well, when we take 120 people or whatever it is to Houston to play Rice, that ain't cheap.
Yeah.
And so the flight is 100 grand, and then the hotel's another 40 or 50 grand. And, it's $150,000 weekend just to go play a football game on the road. And so, anyway, that's part of the problem in that discussion. Um, so there's a lot that's got to be fixed, and I don't know how quickly it's coming. We're going to have this new, you know, revenue share model that starts in July where we're sharing revenues. So what we ultimately have to do, and I say we, and I'm talking about everybody in the country, is remove benefits from the athletes and take the cash that we spend on those benefits and just give it directly to the players.
Yeah.
So I've heard schools, and I'm not just talking about Group of Five teams or American Conference or Sun Belt. I'm talking about teams from the Big Ten are eliminating scholarships off of Olympic sports. They're saying we're going to take a wrestling scholarship or two away from the wrestling team, and we're going to take that money and give it to the football team.
Okay.
We're going to stop feeding the athletes over here, take that money and give it to the basketball team.
Yeah.
And then they're taking the food. Like, we feed these kids a lot of meals in addition to their meal stipend that they get, like if they were eating in the cafeteria. We also feed them other meals after workouts. Well, we have a budget for that, so we'll take that cash and we'll just give it to the players, because we've got to figure out a way, or we're just not going to be competitive.
Yeah.
That's all it is, man. If we can't figure out a way to start paying these kids, then we're not going to be competitive.
Did you see anything? And it was funny because scheduling seemed to be so important for the longest period of time. And FBS, FCS, everyone was always talking about how important it was to schedule no cream puffs. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see, listen, if you go undefeated, even if you got several cream puffs, and you could lose to one like Northern Illinois, you're going to play for a national title. If UAB runs the table and goes undefeated, there is a probably better than 50-50 shot you're going to be in that final 12. Is that changing the way coaches are scheduling games, or do they want one more conference game? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in football, the head coach and I, and in our case, a guy named Bryant Carter, he's our CFO. We do the scheduling together. We consult with the coach, like, hey, here's the teams that are available. We need a game, week 4 of 2031. And here's the teams that are available. Who do we want to play and why? And that could be geography. It could be, if we're sitting there and we're looking at it, we could play Akron or Southern Cal. We're probably going to pick Akron because we want to, you're trying to get enough wins that get you to bowl eligibility. Once you get to bowl eligibility consistently, now you're really trying to push to win more and get to the championship. Winning begets winning, and that's what you're trying to do. And ultimately, as you said, if we win enough, you can maybe get into the playoff. I think that I don't want to speak for the SEC or the Big Ten, but it appears as if they don't need to schedule any harder than they already have within their conference. There's been some discussion that maybe they'll start doing a SEC versus Big Ten kind of matchup every year, and like pre-design one game where they take whoever looks like they're supposed to be number one and play the other preseason number one, and every year go at it. I think that sounds like an interesting thing for the fans, but if you're the coach and you're measured on wins. You're not measured on, are the fans excited? You're simply measured on wins.
Yeah.
You just need enough wins to get to that playoff.
Yeah,
And so I'm not sure it's to their advantage to do that.
It makes me wonder about the Chick-fil-A bowls and some of those early bowl games that are really fun. I mean, I love that. And I remember back in the 80s and 90s, Alabama, Auburn, UAB. I mean, they'd all start off with like 3 or 4 cream puffs to start the season.
Yeah. Those games though. So here's what I'd change about them. Each conference is affiliated with different bowl games. So the Chick-fil-A Bowl is an SEC bowl. The Independence Bowl has historically been a Conference USA Bowl. The Armed Forces Bowl down in Fort Worth. I was confused. The armed forces and the military. One's at the Navy Stadium in
Yep.
Annapolis. The other one's at TCU Stadium in Fort Worth. Anyway, both of them have historically been American Conference Bowls. Like the Bahamas Bowl was a CUSA Bowl that we went to. I would eliminate those conference affiliations
Yeah.
and try instead to just say, like, here's all the bowls, here's all the teams. Now let's just look at who's the best matchup. And the matchup could be, yes, records, regardless of, I mean, you don't want two people from the same league to play each other, but geography is important. So, like, North Texas played Texas State this year in their bowl game, and they had a great crowd.
Yeah.
Because you had two teams that had not played each other but weren't from far away, and their fans could get to the game.
Yeah.
And so they ended up with a great event. Let's not match North Texas up with, I don't know, New Mexico. Not that that's terrible, but
No, it's
make them go to Detroit, and you go, well, their fans aren't anywhere close. You're asking them to go north in the winter. I don't think that's going to happen,
Yeah, that's fair enough. UAB director, he's the athletic director. This is the UAB director's chair. Mark Ingram joins us every single week here. Go Blazers. Check out UABsports.com. We are catching up here in 2025, talking about what we change about the CFP. And of course, it'll be interesting to see what happens between now and, of course, the following season. I do think there's some things they can do. We were talking, you and I had a conversation the other day. I just called you, and you obviously brought Trent Dilfer back for a third season, which I love, and I think it's great. And I think he's got a lot to prove, and he's one of those guys you just kind of root for. But I wanted you to talk just a little bit about your exit strategy or your exit interviews you have with certain coaches, and we'll just use college football because I probably know you do this with every one of your coaches. At the end of the season, you probably have a sit down or something like that, but football is probably a little bit different. And tell me how that conversation went with Trent Dilfer at the end of the season. And then I want to kind of get into some things that could be considered a little riffraff in coaches itself. But what was that conversation like with him? Obviously, I've gotten to know him a little bit by doing the Inferno and stuff, and is a good guy. And I'm super excited for his season next year. I know we had talked about you talked about there's going to be 3 teams with a triple option that you're going to have to deal with this year. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah. So I have a meeting with every head coach at the end of their season, and we talk about there's a lot of variables depending on how their season went. But you just sort of you say, hey, look, let's just kind of recap the year. How do you think it went? Why did we do well or not? What's recruiting look like for the upcoming year, your incoming class? How does that look? How do you like your existing staff? Do you feel like you're getting everything you need? And it's not just the people that report to them directly. It's also people who work with them indirectly. So, for example, the academic staff does not report to the football staff. The academic staff is their own group, but we have people inside that academic staff who work just with, in this case, you asked about football, but they're assigned to each sport.
Yeah.
So I would ask the head coach, how's your academic person? How's your strength coach? How's your trainer? Those people don't report to them, but they work with them every day. So they're part of their team, so we talk about all those relationships. What are things that you need to be successful coach that you don't have? That doesn't mean we can, I always have to say, with an asterisk there, that doesn't mean that what you answer here means I'm going to go get it, but I need to know what you think you need so that I can at least try to put a plan together to try to get that for you. And maybe that thing is totally unrealistic. Well, we got to have a rocket ship on the roof of Bartow, and if we don't, we're just never, well, then we're just never, And so that's how that goes, like generally. And then with a sport, well, with every sport, those head coaches meet with their assistants and they do the same thing. In a lot of cases, particularly football, because the staffs are so large, those conversations have been kind of ongoing week to week. So by the end of the season, you kind of know where you stand. It's not like you walk in the day after your last game, if you're an assistant, and go to the head coach and be like, what? I'm out. I mean, it could happen, but not usually.
Yeah.
Usually there's an understanding, hey man, we're not good at this area, and it's the area that you manage, and we've got to improve there. And sometimes it's, and by the way, I don't get along with you and I can't stand you. Or it's, man, I love you. We're just not, we got to mix something up. We can't just keep doing the same thing. So that's ongoing. With Trent this year, I would say that was an ongoing conversation nearly every week, and specifically, maybe the last 3 to 4 weeks, we were, very candid conversations about where we are and what did we do well. I know our fans, anybody that listens, thinks we did nothing right, but that's
No,
not
it's not true.
objectively
Yeah.
true. And I actually thought we did improve a little bit. It was a low bar, but we did improve a little bit all the way to the end of the year. I actually thought we did some good things on defense, which our fans would really hate to hear me say, but there's moments that I could point to during the year, like we're playing Arkansas, we're up 14-0, and we attempted an onside kick. Well, that's that moment where if you get it, you're a genius.
Mhm.
If not, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get it. And oddly, this is unique. The ball bounced right into the arms of the Arkansas player, and he returned it.
Yeah.
Usually, you just cover it. He returned it to like the 25-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we held them to a field goal. The year one defense under Trent Dilfer does not do that.
Yeah.
So there were things like that. I'm just using that one series as an example. We missed a field goal. We have the special teams player of the year in our kicker, and he missed a field goal from the 7-yard line, middle of the field, as time expired to beat Charlotte, and we lose because he missed it.
Yeah.
And look, there's other things. It's that we didn't lose the game because of him.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things during the game that we could have done differently, but just like that's how close though we were to winning that game.
Yeah.
And then we were up 19-7 in the third quarter against South Florida and lost. We were up 20-3 in the third quarter against UConn and lost. That's how close. And then you add that Charlotte game. That's how close we were to going to a bowl game.
Yeah.
And so we weren't as far as it may seem. And Trent has no problem, honestly, with criticism. He's different than any coach that I've ever worked with. That doesn't mean that he agrees with everything that I might say, but he receives it really well.
And he'll usually bring it up before you have to bring it up for him, which is nice, which is a really good quality.
It's refreshing and unusual. And so defense is a problem. We actually regressed a little bit on offense, which he took responsibility for.
You also lost your quarterback. I mean, and I know Kitten did a nice job.
Our quarterback got hurt in the middle of the year. We had to make a change with a guy that hadn't played in a couple of years, and so that's part of it. And but I think we kind of outsmarted ourselves a little bit offensively. I think we had a lot of sort of offensive brain power, firepower, brain power, whatever, probably more than we needed between Nick Coleman, who's a great coach and a great guy, was working with the quarterbacks, Alex Mortensen, our offensive coordinator, and then Trent. You got a lot of people who basically, it's like you got 3 offensive coordinators.
Yeah. I got a basketball question. We'll do some classic rock here in just a second towards the end of the thing. I wanted to ask you one more question about college football. So you've gone through the year. Obviously, the defense was not what you wanted to do. And obviously, if Trent's going to keep his job, someone's going to have to take the hook. Someone's going to have to go. And when you see that, how does someone like Trent Dilfer, and based on your experiences in AD up in Tennessee and UAB, where is that line of loyalty to your coaches? Obviously, he brought him in. He's his responsibility. And so you're like, okay, well, if my neck's not getting chopped off, someone else has to go. I can't keep the staff together. So how difficult is that significance there when you're talking about getting rid of coaches? And do you have a say in that then? Do you say, hey, listen, this didn't work, maybe we can go this direction?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, do I have a say? Of course I've got a say.
Yeah.
But you also, if you're me, you got to look at the head coach and go, look, these are the things that are obviously not okay. I don't really care how they improve, but this is what's got to improve.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what we think needs to be done to improve here, because we can't keep doing this. And so, our fans probably don't know this, but after our first year with Coach Dilfer, he made some changes. They just weren't as publicly known. Some people moved on their own. They moved on, and he moved some on as well and made adjustments. And after year one, said to the people that stayed, hey, okay, we're going to make these adjustments. We can't do this again.
Yeah.
And so they got it. And the people that he kept, he felt like they had a reasonable plan as to why they weren't what they needed to be and how they were going to be better year two. Well, sometimes in some cases it did work. Believe it or not, some of those things did work. Excuse me. Like we were dramatically better on special teams. Dramatically better. Kicking, punting, and the game itself, coverage and so forth. Like we were dramatically better on special teams. We had a All-American punt returner. We took a kickoff return for a touchdown this year, which just doesn't happen a lot anymore in the modern game. And so we did improve in some areas, but in some, it was like, hey man, you had a plan. I thought the plan was going to work, but it didn't work. Or you didn't execute the plan quite the way you said you were going to for whatever reason. And so he had to make some changes. He basically revamped the entire defensive staff.
Yeah.
And we brought in a guy named Steve Russ. Steve most recently was at Air Force. Steve's been a coach for like 25 years in college and in the NFL. The value of the NFL experience is because they don't have any academics or compliance or recruiting duties. It's just like PhD in football. You just study football all the time. And situations is what they are best at, like what a coach would call situational football. Every unique scenario that you could possibly come up with, second and every distance, third and every distance from every point on the field, and this much time on the clock, and just millions of situations you get really good at. And so having some NFL experience, I think, is really valuable for that reason. I think it's also really valuable in recruiting. Every single player that we have in every sport thinks that they can play professionally. Even the kid that never gets in the game kind of thinks maybe. And that sounds ridiculous.
He should,
but they do think that. And so in the recruiting process, being like, hey, Coach Curry's going to be your whatever position coach, and he was in the NFL for 5 years, and so he knows what an NFL, if you're a guard or a linebacker or whatever, he knows what that looks like, and he can help get there. So that's valuable. But the other thing that Steve brings, first of all, he's really high energy, which we needed. He has a real commanding presence. He's an Air Force graduate. He didn't just come from Air Force. He is also an Air Force graduate. He has a real commanding presence about him that is important. You're not just managing the players. You got to manage your staff, your defensive staff. And you got a lot of, not conflicting, but a lot of different ideas of how we do things. And he's got the defensive coordinator go, well, Coach Curry, I appreciate that that's how you used to do it, but that ain't the way we're doing it here. And you got to agree, because you got to go to your position room, and then you got to teach your guys how to do what I told you we're doing. There can't be any dissension. Coach so-and-so's Coach Ingram is crazy. We're not really going to tackle like that. That's not the way I do it. Well, now you've got a problem with your players. They don't know who to listen to. So Steve has a real commanding presence there. And also, and you mentioned it, and this wasn't the end-all, be-all reason, but we do play 3 triple option teams next year, which is Army. Army will be here. We're back at Navy, and then we go to Rice. And Rice hired the head coach from Davidson, who runs triple option.
Big time,
So that's 3 conference games that all run the triple option. So it's not that we only want to stop the triple option, but we got to figure out a way to stop the dadgum triple option. Because we got to play them. And so that was really valuable. We also got a guy, one of the finalists for our defensive coordinator search was a guy named Ryan Lewis at Alabama State. And he is now our corners coach. So we actually got 2 defensive coordinators on the staff. We really have, in terms of experience, really beefed up the staff on the defensive side. And Ryan's got great relationships in our state. He's worked for a long, long time in our state, and he had done a terrific job down there in Montgomery. And he's a really good guy who's also high energy and was really helpful in recruiting. So I feel really good. I'm excited about the way the defensive staff has shaped up. And now, you got to continue to recruit and then go out scheme the other teams and try to get those wins. So we have another tough schedule with both of the academies, but I feel good about where we are. We lost some guys in the portal, but we picked up some really good players too. So
Let's talk some rock and roll, my friend. It's
Okay.
always fun part. Yeah, I appreciate you talking business. We haven't talked in a couple of months, and so I really wanted to kind of get through a lot of different things, and we can't wait
Yeah.
and we didn't even get into basketball. We'll talk about that next week. I know the
Okay.
team's doing really well, and I've got a chance to get on and check out several things. Um, there is going to be a Van Halen documentary coming out. It is unauthorized. It's going to be on Netflix. So we love those unauthorized documentaries.
Right.
Because you get some good juicy stuff. And we went through, actually, I was on Fox 6 the other day. We were talking about some of the best documentaries we've ever seen in the past. This is Spinal Tap, The Last Waltz, Another Brick, Hammer the Gods. I mean, it's amazing. So I wanted to know, are there any good documentaries that you can remember or any good rock and roll movies you like? And are there any bands that you'd like to see a documentary about that we have not seen yet?
Well, the thing about documentaries, it's kind of like autobiographies. I prefer nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
always question as to whether how accurate, it's coming from the perspective of one person, but what do all the other people think?
Mhm.
Like the We Are Marshall story, if you watch that movie, it's just awesome. It's an awesome movie. But I've always wondered, Jack Lingle, who I know, that is the head coach, I always wonder, it kind of focuses, that's the Matthew McConaughey character. It kind of focuses on Jack and how that all came to be. And I don't question any of it, but there had to be dozens and dozens of other key figures that you just couldn't jam into the movie, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I bet it wasn't quite the way that it seems. And books are that way. Somebody writes a book and they're like, this is my story. It's like, yeah, but you left out all this other stuff that doesn't make you look very good or wouldn't make you look very good. So the unauthorized documentary about Van Halen could go any number of directions. I thought that if you've ever seen the Motley Crue documentary, what is it called? Oh gosh.
That was one I did not. I knew they had done one. And
Well, Nikki
there's,
Sixx wrote a book, and
yeah.
it's the documentary. It's his perspective
Hmm.
of kind of their journey, and the documentary is based on that book, and the name of it is I've lost, but it's entertaining and it's good, and there's moments in it where you I remember certain things happening, like Vince Neil in this car accident, and the drummer from uh one of their best friends, a drummer from another band, died in this horrible car accident. Like, I remembered that happening, and so all that's in there. And again, it's mostly about Nikki Sixx. So anyway, it's
Well,
really good.
Nicky died, right? And they brought him back, right?
Yeah, and it kind
Yeah.
of goes through that, how they did that,
Yeah.
and then he wrote the song "Kickstart My Heart"
Hmm.
about the fact that they gave him two injections, um, not
What?
EpiPens, but like adrenaline or whatever.
Yeah.
Two of them
What a way to
in the
go.
ambulance,
Yeah.
and he woke up, yeah, from his
Well,
heroin.
it's gonna be a stellar year, of course. I hope that we get a chance to go to some rock and roll shows. Of course, the Coco Amphitheater, right down in your neck of the woods, down there, Protective, is going to be opening up later on this spring and summer. Looking forward to that. It's going to be fantastic. They've already got Rod Stewart down there, and they're doing a yacht rock night. I think Christopher Cross is supposed to be playing down there. Should be a lot of
Listen, Rod
fun.
Stewart is great. If
Yeah.
if you haven't seen Rod Stewart, he is terrific. I've seen him; he's
Well,
great.
the last time I heard about Rod Stewart, I heard he wasn't playing his music anymore. He was only doing, he was only doing the book teller thing, the 40s and 50s and 60s crap that he picked up. I heard he wasn't playing his. Yeah, that's what I heard. So I'll have to check that out. That may be a little surprise. And he just turned 80 last Sunday.
That's amazing.
Isn't it crazy? I
It
mean,
is, but I mean, I saw him like almost 20 years ago, like 16, 18 years ago in Atlanta. He was awesome. Amy and
he's
I
a,
went.
he's the 2025 Tom Jones is what he is. I mean, he could still go out and pick up a 20-year-old if he wanted to.
I think for us fans, we don't appreciate how exhausting those shows probably are.
Oh, oh man.
Like, you're mentally and emotionally, like, you're like ultra on,
Mhm. Yeah,
the young person's turn, you're extra, like, you got to be extra for like 3 hours.
sure.
And you got a pre-show thing with meet and greet with fans where you got to be like, hey, and
Mhm.
then you got a post show, hey, how you, good to meet you. And that's tiring. And
Yeah.
the lights are hot and you're running all around the stage and you're playing and you're trying to be perfect. You're trying to sound perfect. You're trying to play perfect. Like, it's hard.
I know.
It
I
is
hear you.
really hard.
At the age of 80, that's not something I want to do. I give probably kudos to those guys. I mean, for people that don't want to retire, it's like, why don't you just, I mean, like our president, Donald Trump, he's got more money as to do with it. I'm like 78. You'd love to play golf. I mean, why in the world would you want to run this country?
Well,
I mean, I saw him on Inauguration Day. I'm like, that son of a bitch. He's 78 years old. He went from 4 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock the next day. And I'm thinking to myself, at 78, all I want to do is play bingo twice and go take a nap. You know what I mean? Pull my finger.
Shuffleboard, maybe.
Exactly. Get in a ship and be done with it. All right, my man. UABsports.com, UABsports.com for everything it is UAB. I'll see you down there at the basketball game. We'll talk some hoops next week. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Go Blazers.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.